welcome to From the Ground Up Show, the show where we encourage and inspire the next generation of blue-collar leaders by sharing the real stories of people who have rejected the traditional white-collar career path. They have been there, done that, and are still out getting it done, building success with their hands, their hustle, and their heart. Today, I'm honored to have Erick Horsley joining us. Erick is a former Marine who served many years in MARSOC, the Marine Special Operations Command, before joining the Sheridan Sheriff's Department in Sheridan, Wyoming. Erick is a husband, a father, and a lover of the outdoors. Did I get that right, Erick? You're a former Marine, not an ex-Marine?
Yes.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Correct.
This is a cool interview for me. Erick and I are actually third cousins. This show focuses on blue-collar leaders, but it is really about chasing dreams and pursuing a future outside of the traditional white-collar career track. I thought it would be super interesting to have someone with a special operations background on the show. That is when I realized that I have not heard your story in depth. It was a little bit embarrassing for me. I read books and purchase books and listen to podcasts about special operators all the time, and here I have you just a few miles down the road, and I've never asked to hear your story. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll dive right in. So, Erick, can you tell us a little bit about where you come from? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good family, enjoyed the outdoors, got early on love for the outdoors. I had a little bit of trouble in school. Not that I didn't know the material, it really bored me. I hated sitting in class. I hated doing that stuff. Didn't really like math that much. Not that I couldn't do it. I just didn't understand how it would equate in real life, especially doing certain types of math. And I realized at an early age that just college wasn't for me. And at that time, with my generation and your generation, everybody pushed college. Like, you have to go to college, so you can get a good job. And that just wasn't me. And I knew that there were other options out there. So I started looking into the military. Found the Marine Corps, and I decided that's what I was going to do. And I decided that probably around my sophomore year, I decided that's where I was going to go. And then I just dedicated myself to that. Made sure that I did get good grades so that way I would be able to graduate with a diploma and get in. And then I just went that route. So I joined in about 2000. Joined as an armor with small arms repair technician. I thought that was going to be really cool. It's like, man, the Marine Corps is going to let me fix guns and teach me how to fix guns. And they did. But then I got put in a unit where basically I went into a cage and counted guns twice a day for 4 years.
Oh, man.
So it wasn't as fun as I was hoping, but I still enjoyed that lifestyle. And I would, here and there, I would do a little bit of college. Then I'd lose interest in it, and I'd go right back to what I was doing in the Marine Corps and trying to just further myself there.
Okay. And I know, if I remember, when we were growing up, your interest in the military started pretty early, maybe even before sophomore year. Was there something that really sparked that as something that you were interested in?
I think, yeah, growing up in the 80s, it was that time of the action stars. You get Arnold Schwarzenegger and you get Bruce Willis, and you get all these great action stars, and they just kind of built that into me that that's what I want to do. I wanted to be in the military and do stuff like that. Granted, the military does give you the opportunity to go to college. Again, it just wasn't in my mind for that. I wanted to just go in the military, and I've always had that kind of that service mindset of doing something for my country, doing something for my community, along those lines. And I've always enjoyed that kind of work.
Oh, man. Yeah, and serving in the Marines for 12 years and now in the Sheriff's Department, that's exactly what you're doing, serving our community. So thank you for your service, by the way. I've noticed, a lot of this show is kind of all about the non-traditional career track, but I grew up with the same thing. Everybody said, get good grades, go to college, be successful. And if you didn't do that, well, you were destined for failure. And man, were they wrong about that. There's a lot of career tracks that you can be very successful. You can serve your community, serve your country, and build a great career for the kids that just college isn't their thing, school isn't their thing, there still is a place for them to go. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. The trades are a big one. I have an 18-year-old son, and he was going to go to school to become an electrical engineer, is what he was planning on. And then about a year ago, he even told me, he's like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't want to sit behind a desk. He goes, I want to be out there doing stuff. So he actually wants to be an electrician now. He's just trying to find a place where he can go and apprentice at it. And he's really good at it. In fact, he's done some of the electrical in our kitchen now.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, you said you settled on the Marines pretty early on. What was it that made you settle on the Marines versus one of the other armed forces?
I think when it comes down to it, if you want to do good things, you want to do it with the best out there. And at the time, in my mind, the Marine Corps was the best of the branches. It was the one that challenged you the most. It had the longest boot camp. It doesn't have as many career paths as other branches, but I wanted the challenge.
Okay, interesting. And I know you said originally you became an armorer. Did you know about MARSOC when you signed up to be a Marine?
No, at the time in 2000, MARSOC didn't exist.
Oh, wow.
There was just, you had your force recon guys. So in 2004, I came up for what we call a B billet, and it's just like an extra. So like your recruiters, your drill instructors, stuff like that. I chose to actually be a combat instructor. So I spent 3 years in, well, it's still Camp Lejeune, but it's a smaller camp attached to it, and it's called, well, it's oh man, I can't even remember the name of the camp now. I know our small camp that we trained the Marines on was called Camp Devil Dog, but it was on the New River Air Station. We would go there, and so for 3 years I taught weapons and tactics to the Marines that just got out of boot camp. And I enjoyed being out in the field. I enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. I enjoyed the technical and tactical aspect of teaching weapons and tactics and stuff like that. And I got good at it. And at that time in 2006, so it was a 3-year tour there. So from 04 to 07, in 2006, MARSOC actually got stood up. U.S. SOCOM basically wanted a group of Marines, because before they really didn't, recon wasn't part of the U.S. SOCOM world. So they stood up MARSOC, and so I went over there in 07 to 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion, and spent my last 5 years there. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So you were probably one of the first classes that went through MARSOC selection and training.
No, not the first.
No.
Very early on.
Okay. Yeah. And so is recon and MARSOC still pretty distinct, or have those blended over the years?
They are still separate. So recon is still basically owned by the Marine Corps and controlled by the Marine Corps, and MARSOC is owned by the Marine Corps but kind of controlled by SOCOM.
Okay.
And JSOC now. So
yeah, interesting. Well, it's we hear stories about Delta and the Navy SEALs and a lot of the other SOCOM forces all the time, but it seems like maybe MARSOC is the last of the quiet professionals, as they say. I've not heard a lot. You don't see as much about MARSOC. Is there a reason for that, or are you guys just a little bit tighter to the vest?
So, I mean, you're going to have those guys in any profession that are the ones that go and write books and tell their stories. But the majority, even in the SEALs and Delta, they're still, the majority of them are very quiet professionals. But I think the reason people don't hear about it that much is it's still a very new entity. Again, it stood up in 2006, and so it's not even 20 years old yet. And so I mean, you look at Navy SEALs and Delta, and the Rangers and Green Berets, they've been around for a very, very long time. So their names have gotten out there. So it takes a while, I guess, for that notoriety to get out there.
Yeah, no vice president has stood up and said the MARSOC guys did a great job tonight.
No, not yet.
All right. Well, I know, again, we hear a lot about the SEALs, Delta. I know all about BUDS and the Delta selection, but can you tell us a little bit about MARSOC selection and training, and what is the process to get into a SOCOM unit like that?
And I'm sure things have changed. I mean, it's been 13 years since I've been out, but I know you go through an ANS, which is an assessment and selection, and during that, anywhere, I think it's 4 to 6 weeks, it's just, they're doing everything they can to destroy you. It's and they're doing things that you can't complete physically. A lot of times it's just to see if you mentally can stay at the game, because a lot of it is that mental fortitude, is what they're looking for. Um, After your ANS and you get selected, you become what they call a rope, and you're waiting for your slot to go into ITC, which is their individual training company. Is they'll and that the pipeline from that point where you start training can be anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on what you're doing. I mean, they have language classes. I mean, there's other specialties you can go through. MARSOC wasn't built as well or as kind of like the Green Berets or the ODAs, as much as where they have a weapons sergeant, they have a medical sergeant, they have a engineer sergeant, they have all these different specialties within their team, whereas MARSOC really didn't have that. If we had a medical guy, it was always a Navy corpsman. They didn't have really a weapons guy. Unfortunately, if you're an armor or a former armor, then you get to be the weapons guy. And then we'll pull what we call individual augments from other units. So like if we needed an EOD guy, we actually pull from the Marine Corps EOD and have them augment over to us to be our EOD. And we had a great guy, an EOD guy that I learned a bunch of stuff off of, and really learned a lot about explosives from him. And he was extremely smart when it came to that stuff. That's when I learned, like I said before earlier, like I didn't really like math growing up. I could do it, I didn't like it. And then once I got into the Marine Corps, I learned that I could actually weaponize math, and I realized, hey, math's pretty cool now. So I use math in explosives. We use math in shooting, all kinds of really cool things we can use math for.
That's awesome. That's great. So to the student that's in high school, doesn't want to go to college, is hating math, they still need to pay attention.
They still need to pay attention. Some of those things like your trigonometry and your calculus and even your just your basic math is used day to day. And then once you get into like these specialties where you're running behind a sniper rifle and you have to do math, because I mean math is all, or sniper rifles are all about angles, and so math plays into that, and it works really well.
Yeah. So what was the most difficult part of A&S for you?
Well, and it really, when it comes down to it, it's all difficult. It's they make it that way on purpose. They want it to be difficult. But they want to see if you have that mental fortitude to stay in the game, whether even if your body's giving up on you, you're not giving up on yourself. And then you learn a lot about yourself. You learn that you can do things that you never thought you could do, just because you push yourself harder.
Yeah. Interesting. That's been a theme I've been hearing from some of the business leaders, that their most proud moments was that they kept pushing, they didn't give up when anybody else would have. Sounds like a trait that's valuable in a lot of different arenas.
Well, yeah, and you look at like the Navy SEALs with their bugs, their attrition rate is through the roof, and it's that way for a reason. The things that they do are they push the body to its absolute limits, but they're trying to see if the mind can go further.
Yeah. And is the attrition rate similar for A&S, or do you guys do a little more screening on the front end? How does that compare?
I don't think the attrition rates is nearly as high as theirs. And that could be due to screening on the front end. It could be due to when MARSOC first stood up, they just grabbed a bunch of guys that were already recon Marines and shoved them into MARSOC and said, hey, you're MARSOC Marines now. So they were already kind of through and grandfathered in. So
okay. Interesting.
And they kind of had to build their program from the ground up.
Yeah, that's a pretty young unit. They were probably still figuring stuff out when you got there. Did you get to play any role in fine tuning any of that, or did they have it pretty well?
No, that's way out of my realm.
Okay. Well, can you tell me a little bit about your time in service? You said you joined MARSOC in 2007.
Correct.
And you enlisted in 2002?
No, just 2000.
2000.
Yep. I mean, I graduated on May 28th. I turned 18 on May 28th, and on May 29th, I was in San Diego, California. So.
Wow. That's awesome. So where all were you stationed, and where all have you served throughout your 12 years?
So actually, I was stationed on Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, my entire 12 years. I just bounced from unit to unit within that base, which is actually quite uncommon. Most guys do hit California or they go to Okinawa, Japan. I ended up just staying right there. But I mean, if somebody wants to travel, Uncle Sam is the cheapest way to do it. You don't always get the best 5-star accommodations, but you do get to see the world. I've been to Lisbon, Portugal. I've been to Zaragoza, Tarragona, Barcelona, Rota, Spain. I've been to Germany. I've been to South Africa. I've been to South America. I've been to Ireland. You get to travel and see the world. Like I said, it's not always the best accommodations, but it's free, so it works.
C-130 isn't quite first class.
No.
Awesome. Well, I know one thing I always enjoy hearing about, I'm guessing a lot of our listeners do as well. You guys have got to be equipped with the newest, the best, the latest equipment. I know it's been a few years since you got out, but can you tell us a little bit about the equipment you had and how you were equipped to dive into battle?
Absolutely. So, like you said, it's been a while. Most of the stuff I used then was probably obsolete. They got way better, cooler stuff, but at the time it was really cool. So, like even just our regular plate carriers. So I had a long range US that was for any kind of long range mission, and I carried probably about 6 rifle mags. I carried 6 pistol mags. At the time, we were using MUSOC 45s, which are the 1911 variant of 45. We had M4A1s, which are the full auto version of the M4. Most of our M4s had Daniel Defense uppers. We had a 14-inch upper and a 10-inch upper, depending on what mission set you were going into. I know EOTech's still big, and they're still using them. I love my EOTech, especially just due to the ease of use of that thing. It's so easy to teach anybody to use it. We'd have other optics like LCAN Spectre DR, which is still a viable optic today, right along with the LCAN. It's a kind of expensive optic, but it's got a 1-to-4 power. You just throw the lever and it switches from 1 to 4 power. It's got an illuminated dot, illuminated reticle. So it was actually a nice little tool to throw on like your 14-inch.
I really like those Spectres. I have one of those.
They are very nice.
If I could afford them, I'd have one on every rifle.
Super clear glass. Yeah. And then like back in the day when I was in, the Mitch helmet was like the latest greatest, and then we didn't start getting those like the ops cores, those fast helmets till a little bit later on. But it's nice having a good piece of equipment that's lightweight for one and doesn't block. Cause we'll use either Peltors or we'll use like MSAs or something like that for our hearing protection and for our radios. And the old Mitch helmets had a hard time because they would come down over a little bit, so it's hard to get them to fit up in there. So the ops cores were a lot nicer. And then MVGs at the time we were using just dual tube, your DMVDSs. We didn't at the time when I was about the time I got out in 2012 was when they started coming out with those quad tubes. I never really got to play with those very much. I got to see through them. They're really neat, but they're really expensive, and I have a tendency to drop and break things, so I didn't get to play with them too much.
Okay. Yeah, some of the new stuff they're coming out with, they have quad tube hybrids that do night vision and thermal bolt, and
right.
I'd love to get to play with one of those. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, they're really cool to play with. Like you said, they're extremely expensive, and I tend to break things a lot, so I didn't get to play a lot of cool stuff sometimes. But yeah, most of our weapons were from U.S. SOCOM command. So like we'd have like your Mark 48s and your Mark 13s, and most of our.
So for somebody that doesn't know. What is a Mark 48 or a Mark 13?
So like a Mark 48 is a lot like an M240 machine gun. It's just the US SOCOM version of it. It's a little lighter weight. Our Mark 13 were our sniper rifles at the time. They're basically a Winchester 300 or a 300 Win mag on an Accuracy International chassis. And they would have surefire suppressors on them. Then usually we run like Night Force scopes with a Horus Vision on them.
Okay.
So they had a lot of really cool toys, and then a lot of our indigenous weapons that were from the United States Marine Corps ended up going back to other units once we got that other stuff.
Okay.
Most of the guys at the time were running like a PEC 16, which is just a small illuminator, like a laser. It has a visible laser, it has an IR laser that you can see under night vision. I'm sure they've got way better stuff now. But
Did you have much to choose from or much say in picking your equipment, or did you kind of get what you got? You said a lot of the guys chose that. Were there options?
yeah, there were options. So basically, you got issued your suite of weapons. So you can get your M4A1 with your 14 and your 10-inch barrel, and you got to decide whether you're going to put your your L-can on like your 14-inch, or if you're going to put it on your 10-inch. You're going to run your 10-inch all the time. Um, if you were going to just be a door guy, maybe that 10-inch is all you're ever going to run. But they got their little suite that they got to kind of almost choose from and mix and match what they needed. And then depending on your specialty, if you were the machine gunner, then you would run the M249 saw or the Mark 48 or something along those lines. Snipers ran with either there was a Mark 12, which is an AR version or an AR 10 basically that's just accurized. Or they'd run that Mark 13, or they'd have the M107 Barrett, um, which is really heavy and not always fun to carry around the mountains of Afghanistan, but it is a fun weapon to shoot.
Yeah, interesting. Have you stayed up on any of the new developments and any of the new equipment they're being issued today?
No, not so much. Even most of the guys I was in with have now retired and gotten out, and so it's a whole new generation in there now, and I've kind of lost track of that. Um, I do keep up now that I'm in law enforcement. I keep up in law enforcement or equipment and stuff to go along with, and that has to go along with a lot of the stuff that I do anyway for our office. I hold quite a few different hats in our office, so.
Okay, interesting. Well, while we're talking about that, what is your role now in the sheriff's office? What?
Well, so I'm on the patrol division. I just about a month ago or 2 months ago, I got promoted to corporal, so now I'm one of the supervisors. But I'm an instructor in custody and control, which is the hand-to-hand stuff. I'm an instructor in less lethal, which is all of our impact munitions, our gas. I'm an instructor. I'm a use of force instructor. I was flexi trained use of force instructor. I'm a flexi trained TACMED instructor. I used to instruct Alice for the schools, but now we have SROs, so they kind of took over that.
Okay. What is Alice for somebody unfamiliar?
So Alice is kind of instead of the old school way of if there was an incident at a school, they just lock all the doors, turn off the lights, and have everybody huddle in a corner. And they realized that wasn't very conducive to keeping people alive. So now they have, and this was a couple of years ago, there was a company that got stood up by a retired police officer, and he started ALICE, and ALICE was an acronym, and it stood for Alert. Oh man, it's been a while since I even taught it, so I got to think of what it is, but it's it was kind of like your run, fight, or run, hide, or fight.
Okay.
But it gave people options on how they planned on surviving. So if they were going to alert, lockdown, that's what L was, lockdown. Lockdown, inform, evacuate, or actually fight. Then it got taken over by another company, and it's a lot harder to use that and teach it anymore because they won't allow us to teach anybody that's not a government-funded entity. So schools, the courthouse. Back when Alice was just Alice, they allowed you to teach churches, businesses, and stuff like that. And so now it's more along the lines of very school-oriented. And then I also taught tips in our office for the longest time, which is kind of alcohol server training.
Okay.
We teach bartenders and bar owners and anybody who's going to be in the service industry for alcohol how to basically serve responsibly to keep any kind of incident from going. But my true, like what I really like to do in the office is I like my custody and control, and I like less lethal, and I really like use of force. And not use of force isn't, I don't like using force on people, but I like teaching use of force and teaching this newer generation about constitutional use of force and how to articulate things correctly in your report so that it doesn't come back on you later.
Yeah, interesting. That that's something I've not heard a lot about. Rolling back a little bit is um, hand-to-hand combat training in the Marines and in MARSOC. Is there a particular um, discipline that you guys train or practice, or is it a combination? What kind of training do you guys receive on hand-to-hand combat?
Yeah, so absolutely. So when I first started in 2000, it was just the Marine Corps combat line training, and it was pretty basic in its form. And then I want to say it was maybe 2002. The Marine Corps came out with the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. Marine Corps Martial Arts Program was a mixed martial arts developed, I believe, by a guy named Colonel Shusko, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me if they need to on that one. But it was developed as a better form of hand-to-hand combat because it uses all things like Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, um, still has some of the old basic bayonet line training stuff in there. And then they came up with a belt system through that. And with the McMap system, I actually elevated all the way up to a black belt instructor on that.
Okay.
But it focused a lot on ground fighting and, well, first off, try not to get to the ground. But if you do get to the ground, how to get off the ground and get back into the fight. So they used a lot of that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and stuff like that.
Interesting. And going back to your equipment, is the Marine Corps still using K-bars, or did you guys have anything updated?
As far as I know, they're still using K-bars. I mean, granted, when we were in, we'd get Benchmades and other there's another knife out there called a striker knife. It's mainly for actually finding landmines. It's non-magnetic, non-ferrous, so it's I think it's like got a copper beryllium coating on it, so it doesn't create a spark. And so there's a lot of really cool gear that we would get that the rest of the Marine Corps may not get. But it's kind of when you have the big brother SOCOM that looks out for you and gives you money, you can buy nicer stuff.
Yeah, I imagine. Seems like the SOCOM guys always get the cool toys, and everybody else is left with the leftovers. So, well, you mentioned a little bit about your time in the Marines and then the Sheriff's Department. Can you tell us a little bit, what was it like coming out of the high-speed environment in MARSOC and returning back to civilian life?
That was a difficult transition, to be honest. And it wasn't a decision I made lightly. I only had 8 more years to finish out my 20 and retire. But the op tempo was so fast. I mean, you would go on a 9-month deployment or a 7-month deployment. You'd come home for about 2 weeks, get to see the family a little bit, and then you'd be right back out training again for your next deployment. And you'd usually, you could spend anywhere from 6 to 9 months training for that next deployment, and then you'd deploy again. It got to the point where I was missing so many birthdays and Christmases and Thanksgivings and first steps, first words, that I realized that it was putting a toll on my family as well, which is when we finally made the decision, me and my wife at the time, or my wife decided it was time for me to get out. So I applied to different places. I applied to the U.S. Marshal Service. I applied to the CIA. And it was one of those things that the more I started thinking about that, even, I was like, man, I'm getting out of this to prevent me from losing family time, and I'm going into a profession where I'm going to lose family time. So we made the decision. It was about 2013 to come back to Sheridan. And at the time, I had to get a job on the BNSF Railroad. And that was enough to get us back to Sheridan, get us into a house, and get us settled. But when you go, like you were talking about, from that really fast-paced lifestyle to sitting on a train for 12 hours and staring out a window, it was tough. It was really hard. And then, not to knock on BNSF, they're a big multi-billion-dollar company, but you don't feel like you're part of a family there. It feels like everybody's kind of out for themselves. There's no camaraderie anymore. So it doesn't feel like a family. So after about 3 years of that, I put in my application to the sheriff's office. got hired, and I get that same camaraderie that I had in the Marine Corps. We're a big family. We look out for each other. It's not as fast paced. A lot of my time is spent on what people tend to call frivolous calls, or like a fraud call or something like that. So you don't always get that high speed stuff, but every now and then you get to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned going on training for 6 to 9 months sometimes.
Mhm.
I know you guys get to do a lot of really cool training with underwater scuba and more advanced underwater breathing apparatuses. Of course, skydiving and Halo, Lalo. Are any of those that were really fun for you or really exciting?
Well, and the military is really good about sucking the fun out of everything. Uh, so, like with your combat scuba and stuff like that, you think it's really cool. I'm going to be this scuba diver, and then you got a guy that's rolling you on the bottom of the pool and punching you in the stomach and tying your hose in a knot and turning your air off, and it's not as much fun when they do that. But some of the classes that even I went to in MARSOC were just absolutely fun classes. There's a company called Griffin Group. They used to be down in Melbourne, Florida. They're now up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. But they teach you all of your PSD, your personal security detail. So you get all this evasive driving training. So, and they put you in a car and you're doing high speed maneuvers in an urban area. You're doing pit maneuvers, counter to the pit maneuvers, ramming barricades forward and reverse. They do a rollover simulator. They do dead driver drills, and at first it sounds really cool, and then you're practicing it on this car that's on cinder blocks, and then after about 2 good iterations of practice, they put you in an actual car and you're driving down some mock city, and there's mailboxes and cars flying by, and all of a sudden your driver slumps over and you've got to take over the car. That's kind of harrowing. You're afraid you're not gonna, or you don't want to smack into another car and kill everybody in the car.
Yeah. Wow, that would be pretty interesting. So, awesome. Um, well, you brought up your wife. I believe she was in the armed forces as well when you guys first met. Is that correct?
Yeah, she was a Marine as well. She was an ammo tech. So I was an armor, she was an ammo tech, guns and ammo. We went together pretty well. So we've been married 21 years now.
Congratulations. So, what was that like trying to build a marriage, build a family, hold together a relationship when both of you are subject to Uncle Sam's beck and call? And what did that look like?
Well, for me, it was a little easier. She had finished her 4 year contract just as we got married. So um, there wasn't that pull to the Marine Corps for her. What was nice though is, and I was blessed in this portion because you get a lot of guys that do get divorces because they're constantly gone, and the spouse doesn't understand and can't understand. Um, Whereas my wife, being in the Marine Corps, she understood what the life was and what I was doing, and she seamlessly would take over the household if I was gone.
Hmm.
And then when I'd come back, not always as seamless because I had a way of doing things. But then as I was gone, they had their way of doing things, and they had a routine that they had built. And I came into, and it's almost like kicking their sandcastle once I come home. So I had to learn really quickly to just kind of let her do her thing, and I'd fall into their routine.
Okay. Wow. Sounds like you handled that well. So, um, so I know you grew up kind of aspiring to be part of the armed forces. You dove into the Marines pretty early in life, made that decision pretty early. Do you have any opinions that have changed significantly as a result of your service and the way that you look at service, the way that you look at the world? Did that change some?
Absolutely, it changes your view of the world is completely different. Growing up in Sheridan, Wyoming, it is quite a sheltered life. Um, you don't get to see the world. You don't get to see what the world's all about. Um, Diving right into it, and then getting deployed to different, I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, going to these different places, and you get to see how other people live and what the lifestyle and cultures are there. Um, I think it's a really good experience for anybody that wants to just branch out. because you do learn a lot about different cultures. You learn a lot about. I tell the people all the time, I left Wyoming, went into the Marine Corps to see the world, and then I realized the world's not as cool as I thought it was going to be, and that's why I came back.
Interesting. That's great. That's great. Do you ever miss it?
Oh, every day. You're always going to miss it. You're going to miss the bonds you made with people, especially overseas. You're going to miss you work with these guys all the time. You eat, sleep, drink together, fight together, and you build pretty strong bonds to the point where even my kids, a guy that I've known him better part of 20 years now. We haven't seen each other for almost 10 years, except for last year we went on a trip and he was in Denver and we were in Denver, so we met and it was like we'd never been apart. My kids called him uncle all the time. And my oldest daughter, when she saw him in the restaurant once, we didn't tell him we were going to meet him. We go out to meet him and she just started crying because she missed him that much. And you build these really strong bonds with those guys, and you do miss them every day. But I've got a new life here, and it's a good life, and I'm doing a lot of community service here as well, which is a very rewarding job in itself.
Okay. Do you feel like most of the relationships and that bond remained after you decided to leave? I've heard a lot of spec op guys talk about, when you're in, you're all in and you have the brotherhood, but once you decide to leave, you're out of the group. Is that the case at MARSOC?
I don't feel that at all. I can call guys from before and again, it'll pick up like right where we left off, like nothing ever happened. So it's a pretty tight-knit group.
Good. And you said you feel something similar at the sheriff's department. I would imagine probably not nearly to that degree. Is that accurate?
Not nearly to that degree, no. But there is a lot of camaraderie there, and then we look out for each other. A lot of times, Sheridan County is 2,500 square miles, and we have a minimum 2 deputies on. So we have a great day, we have 4 on. Not so great day, may only be 2 covering 2,500 square miles. So we've got to be there for each other.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, are there any mistakes that you wish you could have avoided in your career?
I don't think so. I know I made mistakes, and you always look back and, man, I wish I hadn't done that. But then again, I think it's every mistake we make, every success we have is what builds us into who we are now. It's the lessons we've learned throughout time. Even those mistakes that you wish you hadn't done, they taught you something then. There's the only thing I could say that I wish I'd have done is I wish I'd have gone into MARSOC a little sooner.
Okay.
But then again, had I not done that, I may have never met my wife, and I wouldn't have my 3 kids now and my granddaughter. And so it's one of those things that you look back and you think about it, but in the long run, every mistake we made taught us something.
Okay. Interesting. So if you could choose to do it again, would you still go on that career track and join the Marines and MARSOC?
Yep, 100%. I would sign those papers again.
Awesome. What about your kids? If your son decided he wanted to serve in the armed forces, or specifically if he was looking at SOCOM, what advice would you give to him, or would you have to say to him?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'd always tell him is just they're going to put you through things that you don't think you can physically do, and you may not physically be able to do them. Just keep trying till everything fails. As long as they see that mental fortitude and that never quit mindset, they'll do fine in that world.
Okay. Would you worry about them going into that world?
Well, you always worry. You worry about your kids even when they get their first driver's license and start driving their car. And my son, when he first started driving his car, that very first day, he was going to be driving himself somewhere. I was like, hey, be careful of this, be careful of this, be careful. I know, Dad. I know. And so I was patrolling up in Story that day, and he called me. He was like, hey, I'm in the ditch. I was like, oh, yeah, how'd you get there? And he goes, it's really slippery out. And I was like, and I told you it was going to be slippery. So you always worry about your kids. And if he chose that career path, I'd be there to support him. but yes, you would worry about them.
Okay. That's some pretty quick reinforcement there. It seems like my kids never learned quite that fast. You talked a lot about being pushed to your limits, um, being pushed past your physical limits. What is it that gives you the drive or the motivation to dig deep and keep going in those instances?
For me, it's that challenge. I want the challenge. I want to show people that I can do it. Um, and nowadays, now that I've got my family, I do almost everything I do for my family. We talk about it all the time when we're training new cops up, especially in custody and control. I mean, that can be kind of scary. It's like you're in a fight on the ground, and in every fight you're in, there's a gun in that fight. It's yours. And if they get a hold of your gun, so we teach cops like just never give up. You can't lose. You have to go home. And so my family drives a lot of my thought process now on how I get things done and how I'm going to do it.
All right. I know in law enforcement and military, and especially in SOCOM, it's pretty rare to come out of a career like that without some lasting or significant injuries. Do you have any effects that you're still suffering from, or were you lucky enough to get out in one piece?
Oh, no, we all have them. I think for every year you're in the military, your body ages 5. So I've got bad ankles, bad knees, bad back, bad shoulder. Um, my sinuses are shot, and so there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong with your body, and I think it's a lot of it is that pushing. You're constantly pushing your body to its limit and beyond its limit sometimes, and it wasn't meant to do that all the time.
Okay. Do you think outside of the Marine Corps and specifically MARSOC, um, I remember you as a go, go, go person that kind of liked to push the limits. Do you think that's something inherent in you, or is that something that the Marines instilled in you?
I think it's kind of both. So I've always had that attitude, like you said, and I think the Marines just kind of sharpened it and honed it. Um, and it's that kind of attitude and that kind of that drive. I don't know if that's something you can really teach. I think it just has to be there. You can mold it and, like I said, hone it and shape it, but I don't think you can make it appear. It has to be in that person already.
Yeah. So somebody without that is probably not going to be real successful in a special operations career track.
Probably won't do the greatest. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is one of my favorite questions. Um, are you a person of some sort of faith tradition? And if so, how has that shaped your leadership journey and your career track? Has that played a role in any decisions you've made?
Yeah, so I grew up going to church, and um, I'm very secure in my faith, and I think a lot of that also has helped me throughout my time. Because I mean, the Marine Corps, when you join, they have their honor, courage, commitment, and they talk about that, and I think it's extremely important for people, especially when you come from like a faith background or you have faith, to remember why you do the things you do and not to ever let yourself stray off that path. So that integrity that you have is there because you do the right thing even when nobody's looking, because somebody's always looking. And later on in life or later on in the afterlife, I'm going to have to answer for the things I've done, and I want to make sure that I've got some pretty good answers on the board. I don't want to have to stand there and try to justify something that wasn't quite the right thing to do. So I live a lot of my life just remembering that even though I think nobody's watching, there's always somebody watching, and I've got to answer to that.
Okay. Have there been any difficult decisions that you regret?
I wouldn't say that there's any difficult decisions, no. Me and my wife got married a little faster. I wish I could have given her the bigger wedding like she wanted. We kind of were in a crunch and had to do it quick. But
2 Marines, imagine that.
yep. 2 Marines, there are 2 witnesses, and the justice of the peace. But to this day, I wish I still could have given her that big wedding. And one of these days, once maybe the kids are out, maybe we'll do a renewing our vows together in that bigger fashion where she kind of deserves that. So
Awesome. That's great to hear. Sounds like after 21 years, you're still very much in love with your wife and connected. Do you have, I mean, like you said, it's rare to come out of especially the special operations community with a relationship still intact. Do you have any advice for a young married guy, or maybe specifically somebody that's in the armed forces?
yeah, and not just armed forces, but even in life, anybody. The biggest thing is when it's your spouse, show vulnerability. You don't always have to be the tough guy in the room. Um, they need to be able to see that you trust them enough to be vulnerable in front of them. And relationships are built off of trust. Um, my wife's been an amazing supporter of me throughout my career and my varying careers. She's always supported me. She's always been there. When I applied to the CIA, she knew that we may be moving up to DC. And she knew that I'd also be away again 6 to 9 months out of the year. She was with me on that. So it's my turn after we kind of settled back down and shared, and I realized it was my turn to support her on her endeavors. So whenever she got a new hobby like photography, I'd buy her the camera for it, and I'd get her the software for it. Just kind of push her and support her in her endeavors as well now. And I think that's a lot of marriages. You may get support on one side, but not on the other. As long as there's mutual support, I think those marriages are going to last, and then that mutual trust.
Yeah, that's great. I love what you had to say about vulnerability there. When you're fighting the enemy, you got to be the tough guy. When you go home to your wife, you don't have to be the toughest guy in the room anymore.
You don't have to be. In fact, my wife's probably tougher than I am.
I wouldn't doubt that. She's a strong lady. So, well, a question we ask on every show. I know you're not in the trades, but maybe you have an opinion. If you have to pick a favorite power tool, what brand are you going with?
So, used to have DeWalt. Used to run DeWalt all the time, and I had the DeWalt with the big, heavy 18 bolt. Like you trying to take the screws out, your arm gets tired, and you have to hold your arm. A couple of years ago, me and my son decided that it was time to get rid of the old archaic DeWalt, try to find a newer one, and we did a lot of research. We ended up going with Milwaukee, so I actually use a lot of Milwaukee now.
Okay.
And he does too, and he loves them. And he's, like I said, he's trying to go into the trade, so a lot of the stuff that I get him for his birthday and Christmas now, I buy him a lot of electrical tools, and I buy him the things that he needs for that. Even though he hasn't started any kind of an apprenticeship yet, I try to support all my kids in what they do.
Yeah.
But no, I like Milwaukee. They've been pretty good tools so far.
Big Red it is. That's I think that's probably our winner thus far. We've had a few DeWalt guys on the show, but Milwaukee seems to be taking over. We've talked about a few different career tracks. I know you have 3 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 kids at various ages. When they're looking at their future and their career, do you encourage them or push them any one direction into, you talked about the trades, maybe a more traditional college career track or military? Do you have any opinion or a direction that you would push them?
I don't push them. As far as once they decide what they want to do, I never push them. I do maybe light the way for them here and there. Like my son, when he wanted to go into being an electrical engineer, I learned as much as I could about an electrical engineer. It seems like a lot of what they do is they build the grid on paper, and then somebody else builds it. When he decided he wanted to be an electrician, he was worried I was going to be upset that he wasn't going to college. And I told him, like, look, man, I was like, the 3 trades you can never go wrong with, because there's always going to be a job no matter which state you ever move into. Is like HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Like when it's cold outside, people want it warm inside. When it's hot outside, people want it cool inside. So when they flip their light switch, they want their lights to come on. And when they turn on their faucet, they want water to come out. I was like, you do a trade. I was like, you can get paid while you're learning it. I was like, you'll never have any college debt that you have to worry about. I was like, and you'll always have a job. And I was like, you may be making 6 figures a year once you get up in there. And I was like, and you'll be turning power off to the guys that did do a college degree and now have a bunch of debt and can't find a job because their degree doesn't equate to the real world in a job.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure for me. And thank you guys for joining us here on From the Ground Up Show. If you want to be on a future show as a guest, or if you have a question for one of our expert guests, please reach out to us. You can find us at fromthegroundupshow.com or on social media at fromthegroundupshow. And if you have enjoyed the show, learned something, or benefited in any way, please like, share, subscribe, hit that button in your app, whatever it is. We really appreciate it. Until next time, keep grinding.